So,
أعوذ بالله الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So today we shall be starting our lesson in disaster management, especially for the project management students. So as we start the course, number one, I've shared.
Nalimu, I'm the only one who is in the class. Eh?
No problem. The lesson will be recorded. I said the lesson should start at 8.
Okay, and now it's 8:10. Yeah.
So I'm just on time. In fact, I am late.
Okay. Continue. Okay.
So what you are basically saying is that our course today will start in disaster management. And number one, I have shared the course outline in your group. So during your free time, kindly review the course outline so that you can get to know the breakdown of the items. Then number two, I've also shared with you some reference books that will hopefully help you to get more insights about the course. Now, the evaluation of this course will be as follows. Number one, we have 20% for attendance. Then we have the 20% will be for either a quiz or a research. Then the final exam will be out of 60. So that is a total of 100. Now, today we shall be covering our first module in this course, and it will just be an introduction of disaster management and what it entails. Now, so this is just an overview of what we shall be discussing in our lesson today. So we shall actually be covering the core concepts and definition related to disaster management. We shall also talk about the types and classification of disaster. Then we shall also talk about the characteristics, the causes and characteristics of disasters. Then we shall now see how disaster management is related to project management, because you are all students of project management. So somebody might be asking the question, why is this course important for me as a student who is studying or who is specializing in project management? So you will be finding an answer as to why this course is important to project management students. Then lastly, we shall be talking about the project management's role before, during, and after a disaster. So in brief, this is what we are going to cover today in our lesson. Now let us start. So as we are starting our course, or it's very important for us to know the meaning of the word disaster, because the course is all about disaster and safety management. So when you are talking about disaster, what is the definition of a disaster? And in Arabic, it is known as al-kawarith. ماذا نعني بالكوارث? So when you're talking about a disaster, it is a serious disruption to the normal functioning of a community or organization, causing human, material, economic, or environmental losses that exceed its ability to cope using its own resources. Full stop. So that is the definition of a disaster. So when we are talking about a disaster, number one, it should be serious. If it is not serious, like if it rains and it does not affect the people, it does not cause any destruction, that is not a disaster. So number one, it should be a serious disruption to the normal functioning of a community. Because as a community, as a country, there are things that you normally do every day. So if the rain rains and it affects the normal functioning, people can, for example, people cannot travel to one place to another, people cannot go to work, then that is a disaster. So a disaster causes human loss. People can die because of disaster. You know, material, when you're talking about material, you are talking about buildings being destroyed, roads, the infrastructure being destroyed. Then economic, when there is a disaster, people don't work. If you don't work, you have your business, but you cannot go to work because there is a flood or there is an earthquake, you know, so you cannot go to work. And because you cannot go to work, your business is not functioning and the economy is not moving, basically. And also environmental losses. So disaster can also lead to what? Environmental losses, where trees, there is the soil erosion, the what? The air pollution, ila ghairi dhalik. So it should be, for example, a severe flood. It rains and there is a severe flood which destroys roads, houses, and schools. Or an earthquake which damages building and essential infrastructure. Or it can be a major industrial accident, releases toxic chemicals to the environment. Or it can be a cyber attack, shuts down critical organizational system. That is also a disaster. And it is related to the technological disasters we shall see later. Armed conflict, sometimes, like what happened in Sudan, what is happening in Sudan, you know, armed conflict, you know, we have two groups, the rapid support forces and we have the government forces. They're fighting each other. And the net effect is that you'll find that people are dying. There is no food supply, you know, government is not functioning well. Then it can also be a pandemic which disrupts health system, business, and education and education system, just like what happened during the corona period in the 2020, 21, 22 there. So that is the brief definition of a disaster. Now, number two. So there are some ideas that are related to disaster. So some people normally confuse these concepts. So we need to know these concepts. So there are some concepts that work together. You know, they work together. And because they are combining together, it leads to a disaster. So when does a hazard become a disaster? So, and what is hazard, basically? You know, so not every hazard becomes a disaster. Heavy rainfall with strong drainage and preparedness may cause little damage. The same rainfall without those safeguards can overwhelm a community. So they're giving us an example here. Basically, they're telling us we have two scenarios. Heavy rains, but it does not cause any destruction because the community is prepared. So that is a hazard. Why? Because the community is well prepared. They have the drainage system is okay. The bridges are okay. So that is a hazard. So a hazard is something that does not cause any destruction. It is something that can be managed. That is a hazard. So when you're talking about hazard, it is a potentially damaging event or phenomenon. So when it is rain is a hazard. This rain has the potential of causing damage. But the rain in itself, when it is raining, it is not a disaster. But this rain has a potential to cause a disaster. Then number two, we have exposure. When you are talking about exposure, we are talking about people, property, and systems in harm's way. So for example, when we are talking about exposure, we are basically saying that sometimes you have, when it rains, we have the rich people and we have the poor people where they live. So the poor people, the masakin, they are easily exposed to disaster because of the quality of their houses, the quality of the environment they are living. But those people, al-aghniya, they are not exposed to the disaster. Why? Because the quality of their house is good. So when it rains, they cannot be exposed to the disaster. So the exposure can be determined by the level of economy, ila ghayri dhalik. Then number 3, we have vulnerability. What is vulnerability? Conditions that make a community susceptible to harm. Look at the picture. Which community is vulnerable? We have one side, the drainage system is okay, but look at the other side. Which side is vulnerable? So the picture on the right, the community living there, the people living there, they are vulnerable. But the other picture, they are not vulnerable. Because look at the infrastructure, look at the drainage system. Now, number 4 is insufficient capacity. So sometimes when a disaster happens, you find that there is a lack of resources, preparedness, or ability to cope. In some countries, the developed countries, you find that they have capacity. But for us in the developing countries, when a disaster, when something strikes us, we don't have resources, we don't have competent people in the disaster management organizations and offices. So hazard plus exposure plus vulnerability plus insufficient capacity leads to a disaster. So a disaster is caused by these 4 items together. Now, so this one, so we're still talking about this concept, the concept related to disaster management. So like hazard, we have already defined hazard. We have said hazard is a potentially damaging event, substance, activity, or condition, e.g. earthquake, floods, droughts, cyclones, fires, chemical leaks, disease outbreaks, cyber attacks. A hazard is only a possibility of harm, not harm itself. This is the key word I need you to understand. When you're talking about hazard, it is only about ihtimaliyah. هناك الاحتمال حدوث شيء. Earthquake is there. Disease outbreak is there. But if this disease outbreak, if it does not spread, then that is a hazard. There is an earthquake. But if this earthquake does not cause destruction to property and life, then that is just a hazard. So a hazard means هناك الاحتمالية الحدوث شيء. Then we have risk, al-makhatir. Also, this is a possibility. The possibility of loss when a hazard interacts with exposed and vulnerable people or assets. So risk equals to hazard times exposure times vulnerability. So the bigger any one factor, the bigger the risk. So when you are talking about risk, it is all about al-makhatir. So for example, in business, there is a war in Iran now. So doing business in Iran, there is a high risk there. Unlike doing business in Somalia, where it is stable, So that is what we are talking about, risk. Then exposure, we have already defined before. People building infrastructure or economic activity located where a hazard could reach. Like look at the picture. I need you to look at the picture of the school. A school built near a river is exposed to flooding. If you build your house, if you build your school near a river, you are exposing the school to flooding. So if a lot of rain rains, what is going to happen to the school? The school is going to be carried. The same thing applies to those houses that are there. All the houses, they have been exposed to risk. They have been exposed to hazard. Now, another concept related to what? To disaster management is vulnerability and capacity. So they're basically telling us the same hazard can lead to different outcomes. What is the meaning of this? You can understand this if you look at the two pictures. We have picture A and we have picture B. So picture A, there is high vulnerability. So when it rains, these people who are living here, the community is going to have the damage that will be created and the loss will be high. Compared to picture B, it has low vulnerability. Why? Because of the quality of the houses. You know, so when you're talking about vulnerability, we are talking about physical, social, economic, environmental, or institutional condition that raise the likelihood of harm. So when you're talking about the physical, look at the physical condition of the houses. One house is mashallah, the other one is inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. The economic condition, we have the masakin, we have the aghniya, those people who are rich and those people who are poor. So if during the time of disaster, those people who are rich can easily manage their situation, but the masakin, they're going to get a lot of loss. So that is the meaning of vulnerability. Then number two, capacity. When we're talking about capacity, we are talking about al-mawarid, resources. We are talking about al-maharat, skills. We are talking about institutions, al-munazzamat, organizations, and systems available to anticipate, prepare for, respond to, and recover during the time of disaster. Some communities, when a disaster happens, they have trained personnel. There is the emergency funds. There is the healthcare facilities. There is the early warning. All these are capacity. So they can easily manage. They can easily minimize the effects of disaster. Limada, because they have high capacity. While acts here, there are some communities during the time of disaster, they don't have people who are trained. They don't have money to deal with the disaster. They don't have enough hospitals. They don't have systems to predict if a disaster is going to occur. So they don't have the capacity. And because they don't have the capacity, the loss during a disaster is going to be high. Now, the disaster management cycle. So when we are talking about a disaster, and we shall talk about this in our coming lessons, here is just a brief explanation. So when we are talking about a disaster, how do we manage disaster? This is what is known as Idaratul Kawarith. So Idaratul Kawarith, there are 7 steps involved. And we shall talk about all these steps in detail. So number 1 is prevention, at-tajannub. So prevention means what? Avoiding new risk by ensuring hazard do not turn into disasters. So for example, how can you avoid a disaster? At-tajannub, build your house where there is good drainage. This is at-tajannub. Build your house away from the river. That is at-tajannub. And when you're talking about at-tajannub, you are basically saying al-waqaya khayrun min al-ilaj. Prevent it even before, even qabla al-huduth al-karitha. So there are some things that you have to do even qabla al-huduth al-kawarith. So this is what is known as prevention. Then number 2, mitigation. What is the meaning of mitigation? Reducing the impact of hazard by lowering vulnerability and strengthening resilience. Mitigation, look at the picture. Mitigation basically means let us build good drainage system such that when it rains, when the disaster comes, the loss will not be high. For example, in this picture, this is a river. You can see the river. But in this river, there is a perimeter wall, a small perimeter wall. So this is known as mitigation. So when it rains, the water cannot pass. The water cannot pass through. So this is called mitigation. Mitigation basically means you come with measures to reduce it. ثم ثالثا الاستعداد والتخطيط. This is what is known as preparedness. Ya Jama, before the disaster, let us prepare ourselves. And you find that in Africa, we don't prepare. We always react. So we wait for the disaster. That is when the government starts to do what? To react. But we need to be proactive. We need to prepare even before the disaster. So we need to prepare our people. We need to educate our people. Okay, if a disaster happens, this is what you should do. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then we need to have plans. We need to have systems. We need to have enough resources to respond effectively when a disaster occurs. So we need to prepare such that when a disaster happens, we are ready. Then number 4 is now the response. So number 1, number 2, number 3 happens before the disaster. Okay? Now the response happens during the disaster. The disaster has happened and now we need to respond. So taking immediate action to save lives. When it is raining, it is flooding, we need to call the ambulance, we need to call the police, we need to involve the doctors. This is what is known as response. Taking immediate, and it has to be immediate, action to save lives, meet basic needs, give people water, medicine, food, and limit further damage. So we need to respond. The earlier we respond, the better. Then number 5 is the recovery. Now, the disaster has happened. So when you're talking about recovery, it is restoring essential services and supporting people to return to normal life. These people, during the disaster, their houses were destroyed, their sources of income were affected, interfered with. So recovery, the government, the NGOs, they're trying to help those who are affected to get back to normal. Then we have rehabilitation, restoring and improving facilities, livelihoods, and system to a functional level. So rehabilitation basically means we are not building new hospitals, we are not building new roads, but rehabilitation. Rehabilitation is just doing some repairs. Then lastly is the reconstruction. Reconstruction, building new, rebuilding infrastructure and communities to be safer, stronger, and more resilient than before. So reconstruction, we are building new roads. Rehabilitation, we are repairing our roads. We are not building them. Rehabilitation is maybe during the disaster, the windows were damaged, the doors were damaged, the roof were damaged. So we are just fixing them. But reconstruction means we are actually starting from zero. So this is the disaster management cycle. Now, what is the objective of disaster management? Why do we have to have the disaster management department? Is it important? Yes. Number 1 is to save lives. So the primary objective in any emergency is to protect life first before property or process. Every other objective is secondary to this one. So during a disaster, number 1, the priority is to save lives. That is the primary, our primary role. The other roles are secondary. Saving your business, saving your house, no. So when we are responding to a disaster, we need to ensure what? We are ensuring that we are saving lives. أولا. ثانيا is to reduce disaster risk. So دائما, if there is any disaster, we will always get some loss. So the disaster management, the objective of disaster management is to minimize تقليل المخاطر, تقليل, because the loss will be there. Any disaster will come with a loss. You cannot say that we are perfect, we are 100% prepared. No. But we want to reduce. Number 3, protect property. We want to react, we want to respond so that we protect our houses, we protect our roads, we protect our bridges. That is why we need a very effective disaster management department. Then number 4, maintain essential services. During a disaster, sometimes you normally have the electricity supply is cut off, the water supply is cut off, the health services, you cannot get it. So during any kind of disaster, we need to always ensure that the essential services are available. People can get access to clean water, people can get access to electricity, people can get access to food, and people can get access to medicine. So the essential services, they should get it. Now, support rapid recovery. So the objective of the disaster management department is to ensure that we recover quickly. You know, that and recovery normally comes after the disaster. So we ensure that after the disaster, we help those people who are suffering. We help them in rebuilding their houses. We give them money to start their businesses. إلى غير ذلك. Then build resilience. Resilience is the long term. Look at the house. We need to build stronger houses, stronger roads, stronger bridges that can sustain the disaster. So that is what is known as to build resilience, such that even if the rain falls, even if there is a flood, still we can be able to do what? To manage. So these are the objectives of disaster management. Now, on to the next part. What are the classification of disasters? Like Tasnif, Anwa, Al-Kawarith. So the key question is, are all the disasters the same? No, they are not the same. They are classified. And this is what we are going to discuss here now. So there are 3 ways to classify disasters. There are 3 ways. So disasters are categorized based on their origin, al-masdar al-karitha. Then number 2, they are classified based on speed. ثم ثالثا, they are described or classified based on the scale. So those are the 3 main categories. So number 1 is the classification based on origin. Classification based on origin, number 1, we have natural disaster. So when you are talking about natural disasters, these are disasters that are natural, tabi'iyah. It is not man-made. For example, earthquake. Earthquake, it is natural. Volcanic is natural. The floods is natural. The storms is natural. Drought is natural. So when you are talking about the natural disasters, hear me, Allah, you cannot avoid it. You cannot say that, oh, we are going to ensure that there is no rain. The rain will come, and the rain will cause the floods. There will be, during the summer, it's going to be very hot. You will find the drought. People are going to die because there is no food. So هذا شيء طبيعي. So that is the first classification of disaster. Based, we have the natural, based on the origin. Al-Masdar, number one, we have natural disasters. Now, number two, we have technological disasters. Technological disasters. So number one, we have the cyber attack. So some people, they attack the government data, they steal data. So you find that the whole of the country is not operating. Why? Because there is some data that has been stolen. Industrial explosion. You are living near a neighborhood and it has an industry. The industry explodes, people die. Power failure. Sometimes you don't have electricity, or there is some electricity disruption, or chemical. We have the chemical spill, you know. So, and these technological disasters, they are some of them are human made. It is because of human mistakes. It is the opposite of the first one, which is natural. So this one is human made. You know, transportation accident. This is human made. It is not natural. And this is what we were talking about. We have the human induced disaster. So there are some disasters that human beings are the ones who have caused. In many countries, we have the armed conflict. For example, in Sudan, there is an armed conflict. In Congo, there is armed conflict. This is human-induced disaster. If you go to Yemen, there is some conflict there now. The war between Russia and Ukraine. Two countries are fighting. They have decided that they want to fight. So because of that, people are dying. Infrastructure is being destroyed. إلى غير ذلك. Terrorism is also a disaster. It's a human made. Somebody can go and bomb a place and people are going to die. Properties are going to be destroyed. It is human made disaster. Pollution. Pollution happens because of us, human beings. You know, we pollute our water. The industries, the factories, they pollute the environment, they pollute the water, they pollute the air. You know? So this is known as industrial negligence. Removal of tree, cutting trees, you know. Then we have poor construction also. Poor construction basically is all about you build a house, and when you are building a house, the project managers, they need to be there. The architectures, they need to be there. The engineers, they have to, it needs to be approved. But in our countries, people build houses without consulting the relevant authorities, without getting the license. They just build. So that is why you find sometimes a very tall building falling down because the foundation was not that strong. Because of corruption, the owner of the building did not go through the system. So he built the house with a very weak foundation and people died. That is a disaster that has been caused by human beings. Now, so that is the first classification of disaster. The second classification of disaster is based on speed. Speed. So here we have two classifications. The first classification is we have disasters that are rapid and we have disasters that are slow. So the rapid onset, this one there is no warning, occurs suddenly, faj'atan, with little warning, bidunil indar. For example, earthquakes, zilzal. Zilzal is something that happens very quickly, very rapidly, without any warning. Sometimes building collapse. So the building collapse without any warning, it's just collapse and people die. Explosions, flash floods, ila ghayri dhalik. So these are disasters that happen quickly, rapidly, without warning. ولكن في المقابل, we have slow onset. These are disasters that take some time. For example, they develop gradually over a long period of time. Mathalan, drought, al-jafaf. So drought is not rapid. So drought will happen. For example, if there is no rain the first month, the second month, the third month, ila ghayri dhalik. So the drought will come, the disaster will happen, but after some long period of time, not immediately. Then desertification. Desertification where there is a desert, people cut tree. So this is a disaster that happens not immediately. People cut tree today, next year, the next year. So the net effect of cutting the trees for many years is the desertification. Food insecurity. Food insecurity does not happen immediately, that, oh, we don't have food. No. It is something that takes time, you know. So that is the classification of the disaster based on speed. We have the rapid onset and we have the slow onset. Now, we also have, lastly, the classification of disaster based on the scale. When you're talking about the scale, we are talking about the classification of the what? The classification of the disaster ala hasab al-hajm, ala hasab al-mada, ala hasab al, in relation to the place. So number one, you have local. So affects a limited area. For example, if it is in Mogadishu, it affects one area of Mogadishu. Or it affects only Mogadishu. You know? Then number two, regional, affects multiple communities or districts. So this one, the ones that affect the local, we can easily manage it. We can manage it with the local resources. So our time is off. I will send another link after 5 minutes or 6 minutes. This is the Zoom. So I've not subscribed to the Zoom. So I only have, after every 40 minutes, I have to log out. Then I have to relog in after 10 or 8 minutes. So it will be going off anytime. So I will send another link after some minutes. So the classification of the disaster base, so we've talked about the local. Then number two, regional. It affects multiple communities or districts. Assistance from outside the immediate area is required. So look at the map. We have it affects one region, Garowe,